morning, sir. Great pleasure to meet you.
From Canada. So we have
Could you deliver his statements here, or from
Yes,
from
as
the
DG wants. They can do whatever they want.
Okay.
Excellencies, Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Good morning to you all and welcome. I am Jane O'Farrell from the FAO Office of Communications, and I'm delighted to be moderating this event this morning. We have the honor of welcoming His Excellency Ambassador Dennis Francis, President of the 78th session of the United Nations General Assembly. He will deliver a lecture entitled Accelerating Progress Towards Zero Hunger for the Current and Future Generations. The lecture will be followed by a question and answer session. It is my great pleasure to give the floor to the FAO Director General, Dr. Dongyu, to deliver his opening remarks. Director General, the floor is yours.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, good morning from Rome. I'm very pleased to welcome His Excellency's Ambassador Dennis Francis, President of the 78th session of the UN General Assembly, accepted my invitation to FAO headquarters. I'm also welcoming all of you, guests, colleagues, and participants, both here in Rome and also those connected from internet around the world. In fact, FAO is not new for Ambassador Francis, as he was previously accredited as a permanent representative to FAO as a head of the mission of Trinidad and Tobago in Geneva, quite a number of years ago, but it's more than 5 years. So he got very familiar with FAO, and I hope he had a very good feeling on FAO at that time. But however, it is real new for you, Honorable Ambassador, after 5 years since I come to FAO office here. Dear Ambassador Francis, your return as the President of the UN General Assembly highlights your continued and our shared commitment to ending the hunger and malnutrition and our friendship. Some of you knew I just come back from the Cape Verde, and also after the launch Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty, together with Honorable President Lula in Rio de Janeiro. It's just a technical task force lunch, and the official lunch will be on the summit of G20 presidency. So FAO, we're willing to bring all the key persons, key partners, work together, because it's a must task for all the human beings. We are living on this small planet. I'm sure that return to FAO, you have found the renovated buildings. It's physically easy, visible to see. But more important, I should highlight to you, maybe through the interaction with my colleagues, DDG Mauritius Martina and the chief economist and the ADGs and the director of cabinet, Bess Crafty. She is also a director for the strategy programming and the budget and others. That FAO is a new FAO, is a transformed FAO with a renewed commitment, new structure, new focus, and of course, everlasting passion at the service of its members and the farmers and the consumers of the world. As President of the General Assembly with your long diplomatic experience career, about more than 40 years, you have demonstrated strong leadership, steering global dialogues to accelerate action for the transformation of global agri-food systems in support of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. In September last year, when we met during the high-level week of the General Assembly, I noted your dedication to advancing the Sustainable Development Goals, particularly for the eradication of the poverty and hunger. Your vision for peace, prosperity, progress, and sustainability is aligned with FAO's vision and the commitment to transforming agri-food systems to be more efficient, more inclusive, more resilient, and more sustainable for the four betters: better production, better nutrition, a better environment, a better life, leaving no one behind, which is at the core of the FAO Strategy Framework 2022 to 31 to guide the work of our organization over the next decade. We also continue to affirm that there can be no food security without peace, and food security is the basic human right, no matter where you are, how you are, who you are. I recall in your vision statement that you emphasized that without a quantum leap in the commitment and the transformative action, the SDGs would not be achieved, and you have used your mandate to mobilize action, such as by organizing the groundbreaking Sustainability Week, which brought together the General Assembly event to address the interconnected connecting the global challenges and to call for urgent action on the food and the humanitarian crisis we face. As a nation, from the small island development state, you are strong support for the seeds, LDCs, and LLDCs mirrors our own at FAO and has been visible in many ways, including through the reactivation of a dedicated advisory board to better support these vulnerable countries, of which FAO is proud to be active member. Because since I come, we established a new office for seeds, LDC, LLDCs, and also a lady, from the Panama, from your region. So you can see we have a lot of senior staff are female. We used to have 2 female DDG, only 1 male DDG. Now we have 1 male DDG, 1 female DDG. So it's very important to keep the high senior staff, which is gender well dressed, not necessarily 50-50%, but some may be 40-60, some may be 30-50, both gender. So it's keep a balance, harmonize the working phase, and also big team, which is more harmonized team. That's I believe. FAO is also engaged in other events under your leadership, include the high-level El Nino event, the MMR multiple stakeholder hearing and ongoing processing, and the 2024 Seeds Conference, among others. Dear colleagues, Ambassador Francis' visit today is an important moment in our collective journey towards sustainable development and the world without hunger. It provides us with an opportunity to take stock of where we are along our path and how to best move forward. The 2024 State of Food Security and Nutrition SOFI report, launched last week at the G20 Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty Ministerial meeting in Brazil, is so aligned, urgent reminder of the critical needs for transformative action. SOFI emphasized that we are at the stand still in the global fight against hunger. The report confirms that more than 730 million people worldwide faced hunger in 2023, and more than 2.3 billion were the moderate or severely food insecure. Without immediate transformative change, it is projected that 580 million people will still be hungry in 2030. That is unacceptable, and we have less than 6 years to make things right. On a positive note, Sophia also showed us encouraging progress in South America and in sub-region of Southern Asia. That is the progress that can be replicated in other regions of the world. With the appropriate enabling policy and by ensuring access to adequate, innovative, and affordable financing. We need the financing, we need the technology, we need the enabling policy together. And more important, we need a political commitment from the UN, from the head of state, from the local government state, and down to the local community. Political willingness and commitment is the number one force to push the change. It can be done. This is a key message of Sophia and one that has been highlighted by Ambassador Francis in different forums. At the Sophia special event held early this month during this year's high-level political forum in New York, Ambassador Francis underlined that to ensure our survival as a global community, we must mobilize adequate finance resources to cultivate an efficient, resilient, and sustainable agri-food system. And I fully agree. And also, Holy Father Francisco, each time he met me, and we showed the common vision and sympathy to let people work together and get rid of poverty and hunger is number one. Dear colleagues, the title of Ambassador Francis' lecture today is Accelerating Progress Towards Ending Hunger for the Current and Future Generations. It is a reminder of the urgent need to do more and better together for people, planet, and prosperity, for present and future generations to come. And that is also what is guiding our work in preparation for the summit of the future. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues and friends, please join me in welcoming His Excellency Ambassador Denis Francis, President of the 78th session of the United Nations General Assembly, to deliver his lecture. Let's welcome. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Mr. Q. Dongyu, Director General of the Food and Agriculture Organization, Excellencies, dear colleagues and friends, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. At the outset, allow me to express my delight in returning after many years to the beautiful eternal city of Rome, though in a different capacity, that of President of the General Assembly of the United Nations. I am especially grateful to you, Director General, and your staff at the Food and Agriculture Organization for affording me this platform, which enables me to add my voice to the ongoing efforts led appropriately by the FAO in addressing a critical and pressing global issue of our times. Today, the international community is confronted with a food crisis of monumental proportions, which, as recent reports reveal, represents one of the most daunting challenges facing humanity. The statistics, many sourced from the FAO itself, paint a stark and distressing picture of the scale and indeed the urgency of addressing this crisis. Every year, hunger and related diseases claim the lives of 9 million people. Alarmingly, every minute, 6 children succumb to hunger. 6 innocents who have committed no wrong. Currently, 800 million individuals are unsure where their next meal will come from. Indeed, by 2030, the year in which we boldly committed to deliver the SDGs, and with global population expected to reach 8.6 billion, an estimated 600 million people will still be facing hunger unless we take decisive action now. Make no mistake, this crisis does not exist in isolation. It is fueled by a series of interconnected factors that together severely undermine global food security. For instance, conflicts and wars are the leading causes of food insecurity in 20 countries or territories, affecting 135 million people, including the citizens in Ukraine and in the Gaza Strip. Meanwhile, the escalating climate crisis, manifesting in drought, floods, and extreme weather events, is the primary cause of food insecurity in 18 countries, impacting over 72 million people. We are observing this right now in Malawi, where a flash appeal seeking over $136 million to ensure urgent life-saving assistance to over 3.8 million people impacted by a devastating drought. We saw it a few weeks ago when Hurricane Beryl wreaked havoc over several Caribbean islands, destroying agricultural resources and corresponding livelihoods that contributed to food security in the region. Dear friends, these are not just spontaneous incidents and numbers, as each statistic represents individual lives, families, and communities enduring profound hardships. It is a moral stain on our collective conscience for this to be allowed to continue. We must respond with focus, urgency, and determination to resolve the global food security crisis currently confronting us. In line with our collective and solemn goal of ending hunger in all its forms by 2030, I have made food security a key priority of my presidency, as outlined in my vision statement and during my remarks at the opening of the 78th session of the General Assembly, with a view to ensuring that the critical importance of global food security is not lost or overshadowed by the other cascading crises compounding multilateralism at this juncture. I have taken several actions. I invited an FAO representative to the United Nations to join my advisory board on LDCs, LLDCs, and SIDS in order to foster coordination, visibility, and heightened attention to food security issues to ensure that it remains high on the agenda of the United Nations. I addressed the 51st plenary meeting of the Committee on World Food Security to raise the momentum and help to strengthen coordination of the policy responses to the food crisis. I participated in the launch of the annual State of Food Security and Nutrition in the World Report, specifically targeting the global community through my public messages on World Food Day and World Food Safety Day. I continue to raise awareness on the political and practical importance of a sustained, coordinated global campaign to meaningfully tackle the food crisis. I visited Haiti, South Sudan, and Ukraine to demonstrate the full support of the General Assembly for the civilians there and elsewhere in urgent need of humanitarian assistance and support, including those severely affected by hunger. In my public statements on global food security, I have consistently referred to the crucial role played by soil and land degradation and the need, therefore, to devote enhanced urgent attention and resources to the rehabilitation of such lands to productive arable use. I have attended two water events preparatory to the UN Water Conference to be held in 2026. That is the 3rd International Water Conference in Dushanbe and the 10th World Water Forum in Bali, and use my platform to encourage the development of a unified global water strategy in order to ensure that adequate and reliable supplies of water are available to meet the needs of sustainable development in general and of agriculture and food production in particular. Additionally, I attended the Pacific Island Forum in Cook Islands, COP28 in the UAE, and the SIDS4 in Antigua and Barbuda, emphasizing the role of climate change, a major driver of the food crisis, in the global agenda and the urgency of our collective response. I also take this opportunity to highlight the pledging conference for UNRWA that I convened early this month, the result of which was encouraging to support the humanitarian programs of UNRWA, including food distribution to a starving population in Gaza. I am heartened to report that during my presidency, 3 critical resolutions have been adopted, each addressing vital aspects of the challenge of global food insecurity. One focusing on agricultural development, food security, and nutrition, another enshrining the right to food as a basic human right, and a third promoting agricultural technology for sustainable development. Furthermore, the adoption of the Antigua and Barbuda Agenda for Small Island Developing States and the preliminary agreement by member states on a new program of action for landlocked developing countries both underscore our commitment to enhancing food security and boosting momentum towards mitigating food shortages in countries in special situations. As we look forward to the Summit of the Future in September, I am confident that we can leverage the contribution of the FAO and other Rome-based organizations, thus ensuring that the summit is truly a pivotal moment to reinforce collective action towards achieving global food security. It is most encouraging to see that ending hunger and eliminating food insecurity are central to the 58 actions under consideration by member states in their negotiations on an action-oriented outcome document, the Pact of the Future, to be adopted at the summit. Despite the formidable challenges that remain, the progress we have made are a testament to our dedication and to the benefits of collective efforts. We must continue to build on this momentum to realize our goal of zero hunger with renewed vigor and re-energized political will. In order to achieve our goal, I advocate for a more for less strategy. Here's what it entails. Firstly, we must choose sustainability. That is, we must produce more sustainably using less resources. With global population expected to surge to 9.8 billion by 2050, and the declining availability of arable land, primarily due to human-caused degradation, how can we boost productivity while our resource base is shrinking? The answer lies in robust governance paired with technological innovation. Nations are already embracing sustainable practices, such as soil analytics, smart irrigation, and artificial intelligence in the agriculture sector. I commend the FAO for its role in reducing food loss and waste through science and technology innovation, which the research informs us could feed an additional 1.26 billion people annually. I also applaud and welcome FAO's Hand-in-Hand initiative, which supports vulnerable regions through advanced geospatial modeling and analytics. I urge member states and all stakeholders to prioritize land and water governance and to share best practices to ensure that the resources needed for our global food systems are extracted and utilized sustainably. Secondly, our mission must be to feed more people and to leave no one behind. Despite the adequacy of current global food production to feed everyone, distribution challenges leave 2.4 billion people facing food insecurity, including 735 million who are undernourished. Notably, 70% of those who are hungry live in rural areas. Among nearly 500 million family farmers who are especially vulnerable due to rising input costs and falling incomes. And as it is too often the case, it is the women and children, the most vulnerable among us, who are bearing the brunt of the burden. It is crucial, therefore, that we address these unacceptable disparities that see women who produce over 50% of our food, over 50%, constituting 70% of the hungry. And it is morally reprehensible that 148 million children under the age of 5 are suffering from stunting, 48 million from wasting, 37 million from overweight, all the effects of chronic malnutrition. These figures highlight the profound inequalities that need urgent rectification. I therefore urge member states to enact and implement policies that ensure access to food for all, while also addressing gender discrepancies and the vulnerabilities of the most disadvantaged in our societies and communities. In anticipation of the UN Decade of Action on Nutrition and the UN Decade of Family Farming, I call upon all member states and stakeholders to intensify their efforts to ensure and to make real the concept, no one is left behind. Third, we must invest more and ensure less bottlenecks. This year has seen a disappointing decline in humanitarian funding, the first since 2010-2011, with a shortfall of over $35 billion, resulting, among other things, in the UN World Food Programme having to cut food assistance by up to 50%. Although development funding in crisis regions exceeds humanitarian assistance, only 3% of that funding is directed to the food sector. We need to bolster financing to save lives, to eradicate poverty, and to address inequality while transforming agri-food systems. I commend those member states who pledged over $2.5 billion at COP28 to support global food security amidst the climate change challenges. But it is absolutely crucial that this funding be mobilized promptly. Furthermore, the effectiveness of targeting financing is still hampered by an outdated international financial architecture, a point emphatically reiterated repeatedly during the high-level event on debt sustainability and socio-economic equality for all that I convened during the first ever General Assembly Sustainability Week in April. The upcoming 4th International Conference on Financing for Development in 2025 presents yet another critical opportunity to address these financing gaps, to enhance sustainable development and food security globally. Fourth, we need to initiate more transformative actions with fewer adverse impacts. In other words, again, we must choose sustainability to break a cycle, a vicious cycle, in which our agricultural practices are exacerbating climate crisis, which in turn adversely affects our agriculture. Consider that agriculture accounts for 1/4 of global greenhouse gas emissions, while climate-induced disasters devastate food production. The rate of these disasters has increased 4-fold since the 1970s, with losses in crop and livestock production over the past 3 decades amounting to an estimated whopping $3.8 trillion, over 5% of global GDP annually. Additionally, the hidden costs of our agri-food systems surpass $10 trillion annually. To counteract this, I urge member states to choose sustainability by doing the following: accounting for these hidden costs in policy making, enhancing resilience from farm to table, which includes growing, processing, transportation, and disposal of food. Inspiring individuals to act responsibility and live sustainability, reducing personal carbon footprints, protecting biodiversity, and minimizing waste. Ensuring that the UN system promotes international cooperation, fosters a development-friendly and climate-conscious environment, and supports the most vulnerable. And motivating stakeholders to engage constructively, synchronizing efforts towards a sustainable future. Excellencies, dear colleagues and friends, let me end on an optimistic note. Thank you. Although the road ahead is challenging, we can only achieve our goals through unrelenting, consistent effort. I have witnessed strong political will from member states in New York, committed to tackling the food crisis. Having served as permanent representative to the FAO and to the other Rome-based organizations in an earlier dispensation, I can attest to the remarkable efforts of relevant UN organizations in Rome, working relentlessly to end hunger and transform global agri-food systems. Furthermore, I have seen the tireless endeavors of even small-scale farmers, ordinary people worldwide, striving to ensure food security for all. I am confident that, with the requisite political will and through our joint strategic efforts, we can and must achieve zero hunger by 2030. By definitively addressing food security, we will create the foundation for a peaceful, prosperous, progressive, and sustainable world for everyone, everywhere, without exception. I thank you for the privilege.
Thank you, Ambassador Francis. That brings us to the question and answer part of this session. I know Ambassador Francis is happy to take questions from the floor as well as from those joining online. So please use the buttons on your desk to raise your hand, and likewise the same function in Zoom. Kindly introduce yourself briefly before asking your question. Questions, please. Yes, we have a question from this side of the room. Please go ahead.
Hi.
There you are.
Good morning. I think that's me. I'm Abigail Smith. I'm from the Office of Sustainable Development Goals. So good morning to my colleagues here. And thank you to Ambassador Francis for joining us and your remarks today. I was happy to hear you discussing the importance of FAO's contributions during the upcoming Summit for the Future. And what I'm wondering is what tangible impacts do you see coming out of the ongoing deliberations to adopt the Pact for the Future that you hope to see towards SDG 2? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the floor, from Zoom? Yes. Again, Kuwait, you have the floor.
في البداية أود أن أرحب بسعادة السفير فرانسيس في روما.
Good morning. I'd like to greet Ambassador Dennis Francis. Welcome to Rome. On behalf of the Near East Group, we would like to very warmly thank you. Interpretation is being provided.
Mexico. I beg your pardon, sorry.
Would you repeat? Because it's not ready. Kuwait, would you repeat your questions?
كنت أنتظر الترجمة لسعادة السفير ولم أتقدم بالسؤال حتى حين أتوقع.
I just wanted to make sure there was interpretation. I hadn't yet posed my question. There was a bit of a technical glitch. Anyway, once again, we would like to welcome Ambassador Dennis Francis. Welcome on behalf of the Near East Group. Sir, we really do appreciate your efforts within the General Assembly in New York to ensure that peace reigns the world over. I have a question concerning technologies and innovation. You talked about the importance of innovation and technologies, and we see that the Director General of FAO is really very active in this area. However, there is a bit of a gap between developing countries and developed states. In your opinion, how can we ensure greater assistance and greater support in order to bridge the gap that exists between developing countries and developed states, and also while ensuring the participation of the private sector? Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador, and forgive misinterpretation beforehand. Any further questions? Yes, Mexico, you have the floor.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Miguel Garcia Winder. I'm an ambassador and permanent representative in Mexico. And I'd like to begin my introduction, Ambassador, by greeting you and welcoming you on behalf of GRULAC. The pro tempore president of GRULAC asked me to welcome you on his behalf, especially because you come from our region, a region that is definitely the basket of the food for the present and the future of the world. And we were very happy to listen to what you had to say. And as a region, we once again would like to reiterate reiterate our commitment to continue to work in this very delicate task, which is to make sure that no one is left behind. We have seen a number of issues in our region, inequality in progress achieved in the various countries, and we'd like to know how is it that we can create an agenda that is more consistent and coherent to support what's being proposed in Brazil and in CELAC in order to reduce asymmetries in our region. Also, our region is one of the most biodiverse in the whole world, but it is facing the climate crisis in a very special manner. What do you think about that? And now, speaking in my personal capacity, I'm very concerned when I hear presentations like these because the numbers that are presented become a bit opaque and maybe become all about politics and conceal the human face. We know about the millions of children who die every single day, but it would seem that we're not doing anything new. Ideas that are circulating seem to be the same to me. And so my question to you is, how can we innovate in those ideas? How can we truly make progress in those ideas? And one concern, which I have as an individual, but also as representative of my country, is how are we going to keep the engagement and interest also of middle-income countries in all this, because they seem to be invisible in all these conversations. And yet, most of the poor live in those countries, in middle-income countries. And so I'd like to ask you, very respectfully, to please include middle-income countries in these conversations, because they have been forgotten. They require a different innovation and a different approach, of course. But in our region, in my country, in absolute numbers, we have more poor people than in many other countries that are considered to be low-income countries. So, President, how can we change that narrative? How can we keep interest focused on that conversation? Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. We'll take one more question from the colleague on this side of the room. Please, go ahead.
Hi, good morning. I'm Sara Lawia, and I'm from the Food and Nutrition Division here at FAO. Thank you for your inspiring words, Ambassador. You mentioned the importance of addressing gender disparities. So my question is, how can we empower women and local communities to tackle global hunger? Thanks.
Thank you for all those questions. President, you have the floor.
First of all, I should like to begin by expressing my appreciation to all of you for the warmth of the reception that you've accorded to me and my team this morning. Now to the questions. The first question focused specifically on Sustainable Development 2, which of course is hunger. And the question you asked was, what specific expectations do we have that the Summit of the Future will create regarding forward movement and achieving a world without hunger? Well, the Summit of the Future is not going to isolate any particular SDGs. It is going to focus, among other things, on all the SDGs. Because as you know, only 17% of the SDGs are on track. 17%. And we are a little bit over halfway to 2030. For a number of reasons that we need not discuss, we are familiar with why this has taken place. Although honesty dictates that one would have to acknowledge that long before COVID hit, the SDGs were already off track. The summit is going to, one of the key achievements of the summit, one of the intentions certainly, is to turbocharge the SDGs forward by holding countries to their commitments. Of course, poverty and hunger, we do not cherry pick among the SDGs. It's a package. But I suppose there is a certain emotionalism attached to poverty and hunger for a number of reasons. There's a higher political sensitivity because these are matters of bread and butter and life and death. And let us not overlook the fact that they really strike at the question of human dignity and human rights. So the summit is going to be a package that seeks to address meaningfully what we do, how we strategize in order to make up the lost time in order to be able to deliver the SDGs by 2030. No doubt this is going to require bold leadership and some heavy lifting. But this is our commitment. It was the international community, it was this international community that in 2015 gave that commitment to the world. And as a matter of principle and of honor, we have an obligation to see it through, or at the very least, to use our best effort in seeing it through. And that is precisely what we are seeking to do at the United Nations. So it will not just be SDG 2, it's going to be the entire package. The entire package. Education, health, all the rest of it. There was a question on technology and innovation, the gap, and how can we ensure greater assistance and support for developing countries, given the gap that exists between the developed countries and the developing countries with respect to technology and innovation. It's a very valid question, because the playing field is not flat, or it's not level. This is, in fact, an important descriptor of the distinction between the global north and the global south. And unhappily, rather than that gap being closed, we are witnessing it being widened, indicative of the fact that this calls for urgent action on the part of all states in order to address it. Now, again, coming back to the Summit of the Future, as you know, there's a negotiation going on, very intense, over something called the Global Digital Compact, which offers extraordinary potential to help to close that gap. But you need to stop and think for a minute that not every country and or region is at the same level of development, same level of evolution with respect to digitalization. I mean, there are places in the world where the level of internet access and penetration is quite low, where many people have not ever interacted with a computer. These are people of working class, of working age. So therefore, clearly, there is an issue there that if we are not careful, if the delegations negotiating this are not careful, can in fact create an outcome that is not the desired outcome. And so you have to negotiate it. That is why I keep advising delegations to be engaged, fully engaged, to coordinate their positions, because if you're not careful, you could end up being worse off. These are going to be difficult negotiations. Providing the basis for providing the basis to support rapid development, such as through digitalization. Take, for example, the case of India. I met the permanent representative this morning. India has been able to lift 800 people out of poverty over the last 5 or 6 years, simply by the use of the smartphone. Rural farmers in India who never had a relationship with the banking system are now able to transact all their businesses on their smartphone. They pay their bills, they receive payment for orders. 800 million people lifted out of poverty. Because there's a high level of internet penetration in India. Almost everyone has a cell phone. That is not the case in many parts of the global south. So there has to be equity demands that there has to be some effort, some initiative to address this inequality as an initial step in negotiating the framework for the global framework for digitalization. And that's where the delegations come in. That's why I say these negotiations will be challenging. So thank you for the question, Ambassador. It is an important issue. And, you know, as negotiators, we know that no one gives you what you do not ask for. You have to ask for it. Perhaps even demand it. Because that's the reality. Let us not forget that we are negotiating here. What we are negotiating is the developmental future of the world. And the need, therefore, to close that gap. We can't realistically be discussing and focusing on sustainability where you have 800 million people living in abject poverty? Really? In the 21st century? When there's been such extraordinary wealth created on this planet? When a single individual, and let me say this up front in order that there can be no misunderstanding, because wealth is absolutely necessary for development. But when a single individual is able to purchase a company for $41 billion, you really want to tell me that globally we cannot deal with the problem of poverty and hunger? for 800 million people? Clearly, this requires concerted action, coordinated action, and prioritizing, because it is doable. It is within the realm of our capacity to get it done, to allow people to live in dignity everywhere. Because, as I like to say, poverty is not a choice. If it were a choice, it would not exist. It is not a choice. And so we have to find the will to do what is right in the interest of human dignity, in the interest of sustainability, in the interest of the very system. Because when people are left out, left behind, ignored, overlooked, and marginalized, they become desperate. I don't want to go beyond the possibilities that such desperation can create. Some of them are unthinkable. Again, the Mexican ambassador asked, how can we innovate on ideas regarding food security? How can we keep the engagement and interest of middle-income countries, which seem invisible? Well, this is in fact an interesting point, because and it's a point that has been made severally over the years. But of late, it appears that it's beginning to have traction. You may be aware that it has been proposed and advocated, actually, by the SIDS in particular, that and other regions, that there needs to be a rethink and a reform of the global financial architecture. The fact that per capita income in and of itself is not an adequate and reflective index of development, because it's really a snapshot in time. And that therefore we need to identify and adopt an alternative means of measuring development that would take better account of the peculiarities of countries at different stages of development. And so what has now been proposed is something called the multi-dimensional vulnerability index. So you're measuring vulnerability, because many middle-income countries, based on per capita income, would qualify to be middle income, but perhaps they have very high levels of vulnerability. And so that index, which we hope the multilaterals and the banks, the private banks, would accept as valid, if that happens, will make an enormous difference and allow the middle-income countries, such as those like Mexico, and mine, incidentally, and several others in the Caribbean and elsewhere. Because once you're graduated, there's no concessional finance. You must go to the private banks. You must pay sometimes oppressive rates of interest that, in fact, has already had the effect of creating a sort of underclass of developing countries extraordinarily overburdened by debt from which you cannot extricate yourself, because you cannot not pay the debt. Honorable men and women pay their debts. And so honorable countries must pay their debts. But when you pay your debt as a developing, in many cases now, after you've paid the debt, and this is just the interest on the debt, you're servicing the interest, it says nothing of the capital. For many countries in the global south, after you've paid the debt, there are no resources left to invest in sustainable development. You can't build schools. A hurricane might have passed and destroyed your infrastructure, but you do not have the resources to rebuild the roads that give farmers access to the markets or children access to schools. And this is one of the reasons why it's so important to have the international financial architecture revisited. Because let's face it, those systems were created 80 years ago when the world was radically different. The dynamics of development were quite different. Lots of things have changed. With the independence of India, a slew of countries became independent. And now you have countries who did not participate in those negotiations, but who are hard-pressed to find the resources needed to underwrite their own development. Yet they're owing onerous quantities of debt to the system, to the financial system. And so there has to be a rethink. There has to be more equity in this. We keep coming back to that word, equity, equity, equity. In the system. This is a strong proposal that the Secretary General himself is probably the greatest advocate of. So is the Prime Minister of Barbados and many others. So your delegations need to take note of this and make the contributions that you're able to make in order, because it will take some effort to get this new index accepted so that the multilaterals can play the role, a stronger role, in sustainable development, given the very nature of where we are in the 21st century. How can rural women be empowered to address hunger? Well, I understand the question, but the fact is that most of the farming that takes place in the developing world is conducted by women in rural areas. In the statement, I made reference to the fact that they produce 50% of our food, but they are 70% of those who are hungry, which is a contradiction in terms. And so there may be wider issues of gender at play there, but this is certainly something that is not acceptable, because the science and the evidence has shown us that when women are empowered, families and communities thrive and do better, much better. Everyone benefits. And so I think perhaps we can be guided by the experiences of these women in helping them to make their farms much more productive. One of the issues they face, of course, is that inputs are expensive while prices for their produce remains low. There's a mismatch somehow. And so there may well be a role for the governments to address this issue. because food markets are uncertain. I think I've covered it all.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, President.
Thank you. Thank you.
Excellencies, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues. That brings us to the close of the question and answer session and indeed the end of this event. Thank you all for your participation here this morning, and I know you will all join me in thanking the Director General for this opportunity and the President for being here with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, President. You know, as you said, GDP and also UN system. We are the organization, technical organization. It's quite big, large, and poor. Also, vulnerability is high among the UN system and organization. But with my personal engagement and passion, I want to give you a free of the gift prepared by myself. And from quite a 50 years experience. And also I invite my DDG and the ADG and the Guangzhou and also the, you are ADG now, you should come. No, come. And join us, we take this opportunity to present my small talking, zero cost, and to you on behalf of this organization.
The member states would love this, zero cost.
Yeah, almost zero, because I need a paper, I need the ink, I need, of course, art. And also promoted the UN language. I know most kids, like myself, from China, English always often used. Spanish, second, French, that's more, and then Chinese, Arabic, Russia. It's a little bit less used. But Arabic and Chinese, we have a special skill to describe the words. That's called the calligraphy. So I hope some Arabic ambassador here represented by Egypt or Kuwait, you can use the calligraphy to promote your culture, UN language. Because you can't expect everyone talk as a working language. As we said, now I'm speaking English. But one of your most important legacy during your presidency closely related to FAO mandate, food security. And you pass that International Day of the Potato, celebrated on 31st of May, and first time this year, 2024. So I met that, and also Chief Economist, originally from Peru. So Peru and your region is it's only one original place for potato. So after rice, original from China, India, and then the wheat, original from Near East, Syria, and that part. And then corn, of course, original from your region again. But the potato also, your original. No, don't be in hurry. So, yeah, I know. And you have more in hurry than me. Anyway, but that's the number 4 important crops for steppe food. 2 is original from Latin America and the Caribbean regions, from Mexico down to the Chile. So potato is top 4. Corn is top 2, right? And wheat and rice, I don't know who is, but the rice definitely is number 1, and then wheat is number 2. So, but still, I hope we pass the message. We didn't have International Day of the Rice. I don't know why. Yeah, we didn't have International Day of the Wheat. we didn't have an International Day of the Corn, but we do have now International Day of the Potato. So I hope under your predecessor and also next incoming president and can nominate another international days for the rest of the state food. Because International Day is one of the legacy from the UN Assembly. I really appreciate it. I read in Chinese and then translate for you.
Okay.
贺联合国设立国之马铃薯日5月30 and
congratulating for the foundation of
祝
UN
民大
and the
国之认可助粮
potato
驱
Taurus
动育总干事龙年5月30日于罗马。So
can be
there is
recognized
three
internationally
China.
and can help
Pudong.
to reach
Some
the
Japanese
food
also
security.
And Korea. And we said like the local tubers in the soil. So tubers in the soil, that's a tudong. And then the yangyu, it means foreign taro, because the taro originated from China. So we said the foreign taro is from Andes Mountains of yangyu. But it's save the life tubers. So the tuber can save life. And now it's international recognition by UN will be assisted. Liang means food security in Chinese. Everyone. That's true. Liang means food, and An means security or safety, both. But we should talk about the safety. So thank you so much, and make your historical visit with this small talking back to your home.
Thank you very much.
Together. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So, would you have a Mauritius? Yeah. Thank you, and enjoy your holiday. Now summer holiday start. I'm so